Hello everyone, and today in this vlog I'll be talking about use case modeling. The first concept that I'll be explaining is fully developed use case for the create customer account. Now I'll show you a picture and I'll start explaining the fully developed use case description. In this fully developed use case description, the first thing you can see is the use case name. In this case, it's create customer noun and it's formed from a verb and a noun. Then we have the scenario, which is a use case can have more than one scenario, which is a special case or a more specific path, which is create online customer account. Then you have the triggering event, which is the new customer wants to set up account online. This is based on event decomposition technique. Then you have the brief description. The brief description here is online customer creates customer account by entering basic information and then following up with one or more addresses and a credit or debit card. In this case, it's written previously when use case was identified. Then we have the actors, which is one or more users from use case diagram. In this case, our actor is the customer. Then we have the related use cases or the includes, which is in the activity diagram. Related use case is if one use case invokes or includes another use case. Then we have the stakeholders. Stakeholders are anyone with the interest in the use case. In our case, we have the accounting team, marketing team, and sales team. Then we have the preconditions for the use case. That what must be true before the use case begin. The customer account system must be available, and credit or debit authorization services must be available. Then, what's the post conditions? Post condition is what must be true when the use case is completed. In this case, we have the customer account must be created and saved. More than one addresses must be created and saved, and etc. The flow activities are the activities that go between actor and the system. For example, in this case, we have the for the actor, the customer indicates desire to create customer account and enters basic customer information. Then the customer enters one or more addresses. And for the system, for the first one, the system will create a new customer and the system will create a prompt for the customer addresses. And for the second one, system will create addresses and system will prompt for credit or debit card. Finally, you have the exception conditions, which is the limitation or where and what can go wrong, which is the basic customer data are incomplete, the address isn't valid, and the credit or debit card information isn't valid. Then I'll start talking about the system sequence diagrams. System sequence diagrams show the inputs and outputs for each use case as messages. Now I'll show you this picture and I'll start explaining the steps to make a system sequence diagram. First, as you can see at the beginning, we need to identify the input message, which is to see use case flow of activities or activity diagram. Then we need to describe the message from the external actor or the external actor to the system using the message notation. Then we should name it as a verb noun, which the system is asking the user to do. Then we should consider the parameters that the system will need and identify any special conditions on input messages, such as iteration or loop frame or optional or alternative frame. Then we have the on message itself, which is a value or get value, as you can see at the end, and then explicit return or on separate dashed line. Then I would like to talk about the system's design. System design, its main objective is to define and structure and organize the components of the final solution to serve as a blueprint for the construction of any system. First, we have the analysis design, which provides the starting point of the design. Then the design provides the starting point for implementation. Analysis and design results are documented to coordinate the work. Then I would like to talk about the design activities. Design activities corresponds to the components of the new system. We have 5 types of design activities: the environment, application components, user interface, database, and software classes. I would like first to talk about describe the environment. Describe the environment has 2 key elements in the environment, which is communication with the external system, such as message formats, web and networks, communication protocols, security method, and error detection and recovery. Then I would like to talk also about confirming an existing technology architecture, which is discover and describe existing architecture. The second aspect I would like to talk about is the design application components, which is a well-defined unit of software that perform some functions. Issues may involve in designing application components is how to package components, including scope and size, programming language, or whether we should build or buy the application. The third aspect I would like to talk about is designing the user interface. Designing the user interface, which is the system in fewer words. The user interface has large impact of user productivity. It includes both analysis and design tasks, which requires heavy user involvement. Current needs require multiple user interfaces. Many different devices and environments might be needed for for designing the user interface. The fourth aspect I would like to talk about is designing the database. By definition, information system requires data that's usually stored in a database. Now, the current technology frequently used is the Relational Database Management System, or RDBMS in short, which requires converting to data model or a relational database. This requires addressing of many other technical issues such as throughput and response time and security. Finally, I would like to talk about designing software classes and methods, which is also known as detailed design, which is a model building activity that has design class diagram, sequence class diagram, and state. Now, to talk about the system controls and security. So there are two types of system controls and security: the integrity controls and the security controls. The integrity controls that maintain integrity of inputs, outputs, and data and programs. Security controls otherwise controls and protect the assets from threats, internal and external threats. Designing integrity controls, which is integrated into the application programs and DBMS. The objective of integrity controls are: it should ensure that only appropriate and correct business transactions are accepted, ensure that transactions are recorded and processed correctly, and it's used to protect and safeguard assets such as the database. The input controls prevent invalid or erroneous data from entering the system, which uses the value limit controls, which check the range of inputs for reasonableness. For completeness controls, ensure all the data has been entered. Data validation controls ensure that specific data values are correct. Field combination controls, which ensure that data is correct based on relationship between the fields. Output controls otherwise ensure the output arrives at proper destination for authorized eyes and is accurate, current, and complete. For example, physical access data to printers and display devices, or labels on printed and electronic output to correctly identify the source. Okay, I would like to define the system architecture. First aspect I will talk about is the anatomy. First, the anatomy of networks. Computer network include hardware, software, and transmission media, which is the internet backbone that has high capacity with high bandwidth, trunk lines, and large high-speed computers, which is owned by government and telecom companies. Then we have the local area network, which is a small network for a single site. Finally, the World Wide Web, which is all the interconnected resources accessed through the internet. Usually, networks has the Uniform Resource Locator, or URL in short, which is the identifier for the web to locate a particular resource. Then we have the hyperlink, which is the URL for a resource embedded within another resource. Then let's talk about the anatomy of a software. Application software are the programs that work for users, either a custom app or a web-based application. And what is an app? An app is a custom program usually for a laptop or a smartphone, such as the App Store or the Android market. Then we have the system software, which is behind-the-scenes software that works as glue and hold everything together. That, like for example, it holds the app and its software. Also, for software, you need to know that there are web-based applications, such as a web browser, which is accessed through a URL and resides on a web service, and it needs to have an IP to use a standard IP protocol. Then let's talk about the anatomy of protocols. A protocol is a set of languages that rules to ensure communication and data exchanges between hardware and software. Network protocols usually includes Virtual Private Network, or VPN for short, which creates a private network but on the internet by using a secure technologies and encryption. We have also the web protocols. Its anatomy happens under 4 different languages or protocols, such as HTML, which is the hypertext markup language, which is protocol for the structure and content of a web page. XML, which is the extensible markup language, which is an extension of HTML that enables defining semantics of tags. Then we have the HTTP, which is the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This defines the format and content for transfer of web documents. And the HTTPS is encrypted and secure